Go ahead, Jill.
I don't know, you have a certain script for the interpretation instructions. I'm just going to say it as succinctly as I know. I've done it before.
Sounds good. Yeah, go ahead when you are ready.
Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this month's Venezuela webinar and online picket. And the first thing we're going to do is make sure that everyone can understand us. And I'm going to share screen to give instructions about using the simultaneous interpretation function. And I'm going to repeat this in Spanish. Voy a repetir en español en un momento las instrucciones para utilizar la interpretación simultánea. Pues pueden ir a la parte inferior de su pantalla de Zoom y presionar el icono del globo terráqueo y allí seleccionar el español si quieren escuchar en español. For those who want to speak in English, you can go to the bottom of your Zoom screen and select the globe icon where it says interpretation, and there you can find English, and you can also you can mute original audio so that you have a clearer sound. And with that, I think we can get started. Thank you everyone for your patience. We know that a little technical delay in starting a webinar is nothing compared to what the Venezuelan people have been going through, and we're going to forge on with that Venezuelan resilience. So here we have, welcome to our monthly webinar online picket. My name is Jill Clark-Golliv, and I am the coordinator of the Americas Without Sanctions project of Sanctions Kill, and also a member of the Venezuela Solidarity Network. On August 8th, U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi announced a $50 million reward for information leading to the arrest of Venezuelan elected President Nicolás Maduro. At the same time, the Trump administration has also announced increased military deployments in Latin America and the Caribbean, sending 4,000 Marines and sailors under the U.S. Southern Command. Both of these actions are part of a campaign of aggression targeting Venezuela, justified with bogus and dangerous lies about drug cartels and narcoterrorism. During this time of increasing U.S. attacks on Venezuela's sovereignty and self-determination, people in Venezuela are continuing to do what they have been doing for the past 25 years of the Bolivarian revolutionary process, mobilizing and fighting back. At this month's webinar, we will hear directly from community leaders and organizers in Venezuela about their work to combat U.S. blockade, sanctions, and attacks, as we also discuss the importance and urgency of building solidarity with Venezuela in the belly of the beast. We will be putting some links in the chat, such as the website of the Venezuela Solidarity Network, so that you can join us if you haven't already. And also a link to the recent Venezuela Solidarity Network statement on the situation we've just been describing. So I'll give you an overview of our program. We are going to hear from Jorge Vialta, Edimar Martinez, and Milagros Dominguez Padilla and Jose Felix Valera, who will each will speak in 3 10-minute periods. Then we'll hear from Allison Bodine. Then we'll have about 25 minutes of questions and answers. And then we'll allow our speakers to have some concluding remarks, and then we'll go through announcements, reminders, and a group photo. So we will start with Jorge Vilalta. Jorge is an organizer with the Movimiento Otro Beta, the other Otro Beta movement, a community organization empowering the vulnerable, and Alba Movimientos. Jorge is an anti-imperialist activist based in the working class neighborhood of Petare in eastern Caracas. Jorge, you have the floor, and thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you all for your patience, and we are accustomed to for technical last time issues, so we are not worried in Venezuela or in the world. So this is we are very thankful for this opportunity for speaking the truth about Venezuela and sharing some informations and perceptions that we have here in Venezuela. So I am an organizer of Otro Beta. This is a movement. This is a political and social organization that works from and for the working class, concentrating on the most vulnerable who are a consequence of the unjust and unequal capitalism system, especially youth, children, adolescents, and women, both in cities and rural areas throughout the country. We work in organization, culture, communications, sports, research, and solidarity. Our policy is oriented to generate opportunities for the poor to have access to community education possibilities, education in means of productions, as well to develop their productive projects which contribute to family, local, and national economies. To mention a recent achievements, we have already graduated more than 7,000 young and older people in 32 areas of job trainings in 14 states of our country. Advancing in our subjects, as you probably already know, we are living in a systematic and prolonged war against European imperialism, including the United States, a war that was inaugurated with the independence of the Spanish monarchy at the beginning of the 19th century, as well as the victory of Commander Hugo Chavez in 1999 and the victory of Commander Nicolás Maduro in 2013. The murderous and genocidal blockade, inaugurated in December 2014 by Nobel Peace Prize winner and former Yankee President Obama, is a milestone in our resistance to imperial fascism. Since then, and just in 10 years, we have become the fourth country in the world with the highest sanctions against our economy, more than 1,000 sanctions against our oil-producing country, with all the consequences you know it has. But in addition, we have been defenestrated and discriminated globally. According to Gramsci, the dominant ideology and its means of reproduction, which in our days are mainly the mass media and social networks, influence, guide, and decide the perception and general opinion of the masses. So, according to Washington and its henchmen, the Venezuelan people suddenly became the world evil, the evil axis.
Excuse me, Jorge, excuse me. Did you mean to have your video on or off? We were not seeing you. Now we can see you.
Oh, do you see me now?
We can see you now. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And we can hear you very well too. Thank you.
Thank you for letting me know. If there's any kind of miscommunication, please let me know again.
No worries. Thank you.
Okay. I'll repeat the last words. So, according to Washington, the Venezuelan people suddenly became a world evil, the evil axis, an outlaw state of third-rate people ruled by a murderous dictator, which is Maduro, obviously. In this matter, and thinking as an average citizen without political education and which consumes social networks, we are just pure evil. In that sense, the US and its allies would do the world good by erasing the Venezuelan people from the planet. Adding to this narrative, in recent years, the multiple blockade, which, as you know, does not only have an impact on political or financial aspects, has generated greater damage in terms of the cognition and psychology of the peoples of the world. Now it turns out that Venezuela is governed by a criminal gang called the Aragua Train, El Tren de Aragua, which did exist, but which has not existed in our country for years, and which is used as an excuse for all the governments of the continent to blame all their internal problems on Venezuela, including the United States and all the South American and Central American countries. And in this same year, the fight against drug trafficking, as 20 years ago, the fight against terrorism was added to the imperial narrative. Now, Venezuelan people are organizing more than ever, tightening its bonds, working together in the country and overseas. Because of this imperial threat, we believe this imperial threat is real. I wanna explain a bit about this. We have been targeted by the US and European narrative as an outlaw state because of our supposed links with thugs and organized crime bands. But the reality is that in Venezuela, the crime rates have going lower and lower each year. And we have confirmed data that Tren de Aragua does not exist anymore. Tren de Aragua did exist as a big criminal band, big in Venezuelan terms, 2,000 members. But all the leaders of Tren de Aragua bands are dead, or only one of them is not dead or in investigation. What I'm trying to explain is that this is a lie that it's been spreading across the media and the social networks for creating Venezuela as a criminal state and as a terrorist state, which is not the reality. You can speak to any Venezuelan and you would know that Venezuela is more safe than ever, and that if you do deeper research in all the information you get in media and in social networks, you will find out that they have no source other than national media in the countries. For example, if you have a Venezuelan thug in Peru or in Chile, maybe they will say that they are Tren de Aragua, but that's a lie. Not only they are lying, the Venezuelan people which are doing some, criminal activities, but they are not Tren de Aragua. They will say that they are Tren de Aragua because they are going to intimidate people, but they don't belong to the band. And the institutions of those countries will not search and will not speak with the Venezuelan institutions for confirming this information. This is a created narrative for made links between a criminal band that does not exist and the Venezuelan government and its people. This is the same methodology they have applied with the trafficking network and the Sons cartel, the Soles, el cartel de los Soles. El cartel de los Soles does not exist. Venezuela, it's not a drug trafficking country, and most of you or a lot of you have visited a lot of Latin American and Caribbean countries. If you have come to Venezuela, you would notice that in Venezuela, the drugs are not a national issue. In Venezuela, there's no huge issues about drug consumptions or as drug trafficking, like, for example, in other countries of our continent. In Venezuela, in fact, there are confirmed information, and there is an United Nations, a very recent United Nations report that says that Venezuela, it's not producing or trafficking drug nations. Okay.
Jorge,
Yeah.
just want to tell you that you have 1 minute left. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. I'm going to try to close this. What I'm trying to say is that they are working the minds of the people so they can invade and destroy Venezuela. Not only for the resources, you know, we are top 10 in oil, water, gas, gold, and a lot of the most important resources, 3 days by ship of the United States, but they want to destroy what we symbolize. This is an historical task of the United States, as we are the antithesis of the ruling imperialism in the world. Venezuela is the only country in America and the world that has only left its borders to liberate 6 other countries and build a theory and in practice a different world, a multipolar world, while the United States has only invaded, conquered, and colonized nations. With the Bolivarian Revolution, this political and continental contradiction became more acute, and now the United States intend to eliminate Venezuela because of the bad example it gives to the rest of the countries of the world, since we want to be independent, sovereign, that our path and destiny is in our hands. To invade and destroy Venezuela and what it symbolizes is the historical task of the United States, as it is the antithesis of the ruling imperialism in the world today.
Thank you, Jorge. We can hear more from
Thank
you
you.
during the discussion period, but you have definitely shown us a good, laid the groundwork for the thread of a good example, which is all that Venezuela
Thank you.
is. I thank you
We
very
are
much.
open for any questions.
Thank you. We'll have Q&A with you after the other speakers. I know that Edimar has had some trouble coming in and out. Edimar, ¿está presente Edimar? Is Edimar with us? If you could please turn on your mic. Tenemos a Edimar. No sé. Oh, Edimar asked to unmute. Edimar, ¿puede prender su micrófono?
Edimar, can you turn on your mic, please?
Edimar. Ok, muy
Sí,
bien.
por acá los
Ok,
escucho.
un momentito.
están?
Un
Yes, I
momento,
can
por
hear
favor.
you. How are you?
Community activist and militant Venezuelan woman, Edimar is no longer with the Ejército Productivo Obrero, a social movement of the Venezuelan working class, but she will be speaking today about her experiences as an organizer with that Ejército Productivo Obrero during the peak of the worst impacts of the U.S. blockade on Venezuela. Edimar now works at the Ministry of Transportation. Thank you for being with us, Edimar. You now have the floor. Edimar, no la escuchamos. We can't hear
We can't hear you.
Edimar. Perhaps I think that Edimar might be frozen. Edimar, maybe if you turn off, si apaga el video, quizás la escuchamos mejor. I'm sorry, we're not hearing you, Edimar. We're going to go on to our next speakers. We were going to have Milagros Dominguez Padilla and Jose Felix Valera. I believe that that Milagros is not here, but we can hear from Jose Felix. Is Jose Felix with us? I'm not sure.
Estamos los dos.
Ah, bueno, los dos llegaron. Okay, wonderful. Permítame presentarles. Media activists with Voces Anti-Imperialistas, or Anti-Imperialist Voices, is a community radio and a project of the Simón Bolívar National Communal Front based in La Guaira, Venezuela. It's a pleasure to have Milagros and Jose Felix with us. You have the floor now, and you have 10 minutes to speak to us. Thank you.
Hola, ¿cómo están?
Hi, how are you? Good evening. If we are, in fact, a part of a collective called Voces Imperialistas. It's a collective that is a part of a larger organization, which is the Frente Comunal Simón Bolívar. We dedicate ourselves to education and communication. We're currently with several projects in different parts of the country. In the case of La Guaira State, we have a community radio, 105.3 FM. We are on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok. In YouTube, you can find us in 101 FM. And we can also live stream in Voces 115fm.com. Through those media, we communicate. What we produce, we send to several different places. We're a collective that also has a space for education with young people, with teenagers. We have a health center here at the headquarters of the radio. It's a community health center. And there we developed several activities with the community. What we're talking about today is the topic of the aggression coming from the President of the United States against our president and our country. We do have some things to say about that as a product of a collective analysis about this, using assemblies and different meetings with the community. In the first place, this is the first aggression coming from the United States against our process. It's the last wave, maybe, of aggressions against our government and our people. At one point, the government said that we were an unusual and extraordinary threat. They came at us with several sanctions to our country and to our government. Then they started to have these sanctions against the entire state. And later that created a cognitive and psychological war through several media, social media. This also brought about impacts on the migration policies that affected our country. They started to criminalize our people and our government in that way. These were measures that were coercive and unilateral. The government of Venezuela is one of the governments that has the most coercive measures against it in Latin America. Governments of the European Union also form a part of this, as well as NATO governments and Israel. Those that set of aggression are also military because they feel that they are in the condition to impact us militarily, because the economy has been affected, maybe the moral is down in our country. They believe that these are conditions that are good to then attack our government. We're anti-imperialist, and we want to say that that isn't that way. No matter the economic difficulties that our country is living through, there is conviction here. There's a clarity of what the interests of the United States represent here to conquest our oil, to take over the efforts of the people here. The effects on us are varied. It impacts our agriculture, our oil production, our technology. There are devastating effects on the society, on sports, on places of living. It also impacts the foreign investments in our country. All these sanctions affect also the legitimacy of our government, or at least what it appears to be outside. Multilateral institutions like ALBA and UNASUR have been torpedoed through these policies against our government. We're clear, however, that it's not only a problem with Venezuela, it's a global problem. NATO is a part of this. The United States also has is aggressive against Palestine, Syria, Ukraine. And of course, all of this has made it difficult for the US to get out of its economic crisis and to have enough oil to get out of its crisis. So the fact that the Ukraine war is still going on, and that the energy that used to come from Russia to Europe is now going elsewhere, like India and China, that makes the crisis more difficult for these countries. They didn't do well in these situations. It's now not clear what the capacities of Israel are in its war. These large hegemons are now threatened. Venezuela has the largest reserves of oil in the planet. Therefore, we can't see this new aggression without that context. They need to take the Venezuelan oil in their hands. The social movements in Venezuela has the conviction that our oil cannot feed the war system of other parts of the planet. Our oil cannot feed, for example, the machinery that's killing Palestinian people. We do not want our oil to feed NATO. We are clear on that. And we want to say that we do need international solidarity, that in terms of communication, we need people to know what the US government is doing against our people. And people should also know that we are the sons and daughters of Bolivar and Chavez, and we know how to sacrifice. We are willing to give our lives to impede our oil going into the war machinery of the planet. Thank you, Jose Felix. Milagros, would you like to add something? You have 3 more minutes. Oh, do we? Perfect. That's why I was asking Milagros about the time. Well, in terms of communication, in the last few years, there's been a strong campaign in the planet, which makes us suppose that the planet, they're saying that Venezuela is very violent, that we are a plague that has infected all of Latin America and the US, that there's a cartel de los soles, and that has to do with narco trafficking. That campaign, what it's trying to do is to justify aggression against our people, to justify the genocidal attempts to take our people and to take the resources of our land. That communication campaign not only has blocked us, but we've also seen how increasingly in social media, there are lies that are being reproduced, and these lies are coming from labs with bots that invade cell phones and the media in our country. Just 3 years ago, there were thousands of fake news that were floating against us in people's cell phones. In just those 3 years, that's come to be at least 1.5 million fake news against our population. So efforts like that of our collective go to try and counteract this. We need the international movement to show solidarity with us and to show the truth about what's going on in Venezuela and Israel and NATO. We are not narco trafficking gangs. That is the speech that is legitimizing or trying to legitimize aggression against our people, and also trying to demoralize our people and to stop solidarity from the world. That hasn't worked because there are increasingly voices in Latin America and the world that show solidarity with Venezuela. We are the sons and daughters of Bolivar and Chavez. This means being sovereign, to also fight against the chains that have been imposed by the US, and to construct other alternatives. We want a polar world, a multicultural world that has alternate development centers. There are other types of economies, complementary economies, economies that show solidarity, that grow together rather than subjugate each other. Thank you very much, Jose Felix. We would also like to hear from Milagros when we have our Q&A. Now we have Edimar. Now, Edimar, I offer you the floor.
Hello, can you hear me? Yes, we can. Go ahead, please. Okay. Sorry, I'm in a rural area and my connection here is a bit slow. Okay, so I'm in the state of Aragua in Venezuela. I'd like to say hello to greet you all, and I am very happy for this space. Tell me, what you think I should talk about it? Should I continue with what my comrades were just talking about now? Yes, or we were actually waiting for you to talk a little bit about the working productive army during the peak of the worst impacts of the US blockade against Venezuela. If you can talk about that experience, please, go ahead. Okay, so between 2016, 2017, and 18 here in Venezuela, the Ejército Productivo Obrero was created. It's a social movement of the working class, the Venezuelan working class, that put together this social movement with the aim of fostering and driving the Venezuelan industry, that which through the blockade there was a lot of machinery that was quite destroyed, and we depended on the spare parts brought from the US, okay, and the imports, because they were US machinery. So we created this social movement here. Here, maybe I can tell you about a callapa that was created between different people from the working class. The idea was to gather working people from different industries in Venezuela, both private and public, and going with these people to another industry and repairing machinery, and we were able to start actually manufacturing the spare parts. And we were, before that, only exclusive technicians were able to solve these problems, but we were able to do it ourselves, and we were able to drive production in our country that was quite stalled due to the blockade before that. And this is specifically related to the industrial area. So at that moment, we were working on this at the industrial level. Also, we received a lot of support from the Ministry of Industry, but it's important to say that this was a popular organization. It was a working class organization exclusively, and we were able to increase production, and we were able to reactivate machinery as well through this project. Sorry, Edimar, we cannot hear you right now. We can no longer hear you.
It looks like Edimar got dropped from the call. As she said, she's in a rural area with poor internet signal. We hope that she'll be able to come back and join us for the question and answer session. I now would like to switch to Allison Bodine. Allison is the coordinator of the Fire This Time movement for social justice, the Venezuela Solidarity Campaign, and author of the book Revolution and Counter-Revolution in Venezuela, Battle of Ideas Press from 2018. Allison is one of the founding members of the Venezuela Solidarity Network. Allison, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jill, and thank you to everyone that spoke before me, and of course to everyone who's joined today. Thank you for your patience. We had some technical issues with getting started and had to switch links, but I really appreciate people joining us at a critical time of support, not only for Venezuela, but as we've talked about today, for the anti-imperialist struggle. For the work that we are all, many of us, engaged in, whether it has to do with work that we are doing in solidarity with Palestine or work that we are doing against the US-NATO war, or struggles here at home, such as those in defense of the environment and the natural world. Really, I'm honored. It takes a bit of patience because of technology and translation and all of that, but to be speaking with co-fighters and fellow militants and organizers, people who every day fight against US imperialist attacks on Venezuela. And I'd like to think that after what we have heard today, what some of us have been able to see in Venezuela directly, I would really think that any person that believes that a better world is possible, a world without imperialist war, sanctions, deliberate starvation and genocide, that we would understand, or they would understand, why defending the Bolivarian revolutionary process is so important and so critical to our worldwide struggle to win a better world. But as activists and organizers in the United States, in Canada, in other imperialist countries especially, we know that that's not always true. And I think that especially at this critical time for Venezuela, for Latin America, and really for humanity, we have the responsibility to build a stronger and more united movement in defense of Venezuela's sovereignty and self-determination. And to do this, I think we also have the responsibility to ask ourselves and to be able to understand why we are in this fight in defense of Venezuela and how we can better convince others to join us. We are just about 1 year and 1 month away from the last presidential election in Venezuela. So just about 1 year ago, I was in Venezuela, in fact, 1 month after the presidential election. I was in Venezuela as an elections observer for the communal election, where Venezuelan communes and community councils, thousands of them, were voting on community projects that would be funded by the central government, a process that represents Venezuela's grassroots participatory democracy, one where people are making decisions about their daily lives and seeing them come to fruition. And 1 month before being in Venezuela for the communal election, I was in Venezuela as a witness to the presidential election, along with hundreds of other international observers. Now, this election resulted in the re-election, the triumphant re-election of President Maduro, but sparked an attempted coup and violent destabilization campaign by the US-backed right-wing counter-revolutionary opposition. So you can imagine, in the 30 days that had passed from the end of July 2024 to the end of August, I was able to observe some very stark differences in Venezuela. These differences were a result of the US-backed thugs being crushed and defeated by the near constant mobilization of the pro-Bolivarian revolutionary forces in Venezuela for 30 days, every day organizing, every day mobilizing. Not just, government officials or the military and state security, but everyday Venezuelan people marching in the streets, organizing in their communities in defense of their sovereignty and self-determination. And in just 30 days, the difference in Venezuela, you could feel it everywhere. I was in a remote province in Anzoátegui in Venezuela for the communal election, and they showed us the shattered windows of City Hall that had been shattered by right-wing forces, counter-revolutionaries, during this brief uprising against the election of President Maduro. But they were having an election next door as part of the Bolivarian revolutionary process. The windows hadn't even been fixed yet, and they were already mobilized to have another election in defense of their sovereignty and self-determination. And this mobilization continued over the past 13 months since the re-election of President Maduro, including through 2 more nationwide elections, of which we've reported back from in the Venezuela Solidarity Network, and countless day-to-day occurrences of building popular power in Venezuela, some of which we've heard and had the honor to hear about here today. And today, in face of recent threats by the Trump administration, which I'm sure I'll talk a little bit about, but I know many people want to talk about in the discussion period, revolutionaries in Venezuela have continued to mobilize. They are strong and resolute in defense of their country, and one of the pieces of strong evidence for this has been the mobilizations of Venezuelans to join and register for the national militia. Before this recent push to join, it was already an organization of 4.5 million people vowing to defend their country against US imperialist attack. And it has grown since then, especially over this past weekend. So why is Trump attacking Venezuela? The strength of the government of President Maduro and the Bolivarian revolutionary process is centered on Venezuela's independence and sovereignty. The Bolivarian Revolution's unwillingness to follow the dictates of the United States. I think the other speakers have said this today because it is so fundamental and so true. It is this independence and sovereignty from imperialism that has made Venezuela a prime target for the United States, and this is even more true today when we can see how much Venezuela's support for Palestine is also impacting the US's attack on Venezuela. It's increased the attacks on Venezuela due to Venezuela's unwavering support for Palestine. Because this independence has also resulted in the strengthening of many other alliances. Just look at the countries that have come out in vocal support of Venezuela over the last week, released public statements. Their diplomatic corps have, spoken to press. We're talking about China, Russia, Iran, Cuba, Nicaragua, Colombia, Mexico, the ALBA TCP alliance in Latin America and the Caribbean, among many others, and alongside social movements. But this vocal support is part of what we can look towards to understand the alliances that Venezuela has built because of its independence. Yesterday, I was watching the Con Maduro Plus, the With Maduro Plus program, in which Maduro speaks kind of about politics and does a bit of an interview on national television. And President Maduro spoke about the Trump administration's latest attacks on Venezuela within the context of US imperialism. As he described the, quote, war on drug cartels that we've talked about today and the labeling of Venezuela as a narco-terrorist state, he described it as an extension of the US war on terror, and previous to that, the Cold War, or the Red Scare, that fueled imperialist wars. And I know many of us have probably drawn that conclusion as well. We've said, oh, this is another pack of lies that's being sold to the public in the United States or Canada to justify threats, military action against a sovereign and independent country. And so it may seem like an obvious statement that Maduro was making as he outlined imperialism's pretext for wars and occupations over the last 80 years or more. But I think more than this, Maduro was also placing attacks on Venezuela in the important context of US attempts to regain hegemony in Latin America and West Asia. Because especially when describing the US war on terror, we know that that has meant more than 2 decades of constant US war. People that have not even children anymore, people graduating university today have never known a time when the United States wasn't involved, it wasn't at war or in an acting as an occupying force in another country. And so I think that this is also important to discuss in the context of the struggle of the Palestinian people. The Palestinian resistance in Gaza especially has really exposed US and Zionist brutality. And in that way, it has really made it so that Venezuela and Venezuela's independence and struggle against US imperialism is also directly connected to the struggle in Gaza, and is also directly connected to continuing to expose US's imperialism's brutalities. Sanctions, blockades, the mobilization of the US Southern Command, US military installations to the west in Colombia, to the east in Guyana, threats to invade Venezuela. These are all connected to US attempts to break a thread that connects the anti-imperialist, anti-colonial, and anti-Zionist struggle. This is a thread that connects such countries such as Venezuela, Cuba, Palestine, Iran, and Yemen, all countries at the heart of the anti-imperialist and anti-Zionist struggle today. One of the strongest statements before made in support of Venezuela, of course, came from the president of Cuba, Miguel Diaz-Canel. And this is because Cuba is also the vanguard of anti-imperialism in Latin America, and I would say in the world, a country that has been under brutal sanctions and blockade for over 60 years. continues to lead the world in the anti-imperialist struggle. And one of the threads the US is trying most, resolutely to break is that connects Cuba and Venezuela. And I'll also just say briefly that I think that all of these struggles, the anti-imperialist struggle, the struggle for independence and sovereignty, is really all ultimately connected to the US struggle for hegemony in West Asia and Latin America, which is, of course, in the face and in direct confrontation with Russia and China.
Allison?
Yeah.
I was being lenient with you, but we really need to wrap up.
Okay, thanks, Jill. Sounds good. This leads me to, where we need to go today, which is building a more united and stronger movement to defend Venezuela's sovereignty and self-determination. President Maduro and the revolutionary people of Venezuela understand their position in the anti-imperialist, anti-colonial, and anti-Zionist struggle. And as solidarity activists living in the belly of the beast in the US or Canada, we must understand this critical position of the Bolivarian revolutionary Venezuela. Really, I think that anyone who believes that defeating imperialism is an essential task will and must support Venezuela. So I'll call on people to redouble our efforts and raise our voices for hands-off Venezuela, to really strengthen that thread that connects the heroic Palestinian resistance against Israeli US Zionism with that of the struggle of people of Venezuela for their sovereignty and self-determination and liberation for oppressed peoples around the world. So thank you. Thanks, Jill, for being lenient.
Thank you, Allison, and thank you for all that you do for the Venezuela Solidarity Network. It's now 8:24 Eastern Time. We had originally thought of 25 minutes for discussion. I wonder, given the hour, if we want to maybe try to limit that to closer to 20 minutes. If we do, we could try to end by 8:45, end the discussion by 8:45 Eastern Time. And we see that we have Edimar back with us. And I would oh, yes, we do have Edimar. And I want to start with her. I'm going to read in English what she wrote in the chat. And then I have a question for her. So let's start with that. She says the Ejército Productivo Obrero was created as a grassroots organization of people's power comprised of free working class men and women and a liberatory project aware of the objective of working and reactivating Venezuelan industry that had been so hard hit by the economic blockade. So, Edimar, I have a question for you to bring this, the Ejército Productivo Obrero into the current moment. Do you know how your former comrades in the Ejército Productivo Obrero are responding at this moment? Are they involved in militias? How are they responding to these threats from the United States? And if you could try to ask the speakers to limit themselves to a couple of minutes so that we can get to more questions and then let all of the speakers wrap up. So, Edimar, ¿cómo responden los compañeros?
Ajá.
Yes, I'm here. Yes, each of us, the ones that are in the Ejército Productivo Obrero, we are a national organization, and each of us is a militant of the Bolivarian Revolution. We understand what's going on with the militia at the moment. I used to be part of the military in the Air Force. I used to be a part of that. And just like I was, also there were other people from the Ejército Productivo that were part of that. Those of us, in the group that weren't part of the armed forces have been enrolling in the militia. We fully understand that this is one of the things that our president is calling for, And this is how we demonstrate that the Venezuelan people are strong and are resolute. And we're searching for the strategies, the best strategies to continue to have peace. I wanted to reinforce today that the organization of the people, along with the will of our president, is what keeps the peace here. We fully understand this. And as I said, from our places of work, from wherever we are, we study the situation and we seek strategies that are necessary to keep our territory in peace and to maintain the consciousness of our people, to keep also the joy that the people have. We are alert, but we continue to have our family routines, our work routines. As I said, I live in a rural area of Aragua State that is close to one of the places where Aragua used to inhabit. And we're here, we're organized, and we are looking into everything that happens in our country. But we continue to live our routine lives because that is what the Venezuelan people are, movement and consciousness. We are alert and doing what we need to, but we continue to be at peace in our routines. And we understand the importance of people outside our country listen to us and know what is happening here. We fully trust from here where I am and from the union with the military that characterizes our country, I am at peace and I trust that our people will pull through and that this military force will allow us to continue
Thank
on.
you very much, Edimar, and I hope that the war planners at the Pentagon are hearing you, that the Venezuelan people are organized, armed, and ready to defend their revolution. I also understand that Milagros is ready to talk to us for a couple of minutes about the effect of sanctions on communications and the effective sanctions on communications and the media. So Milagros, would you like to speak to us for a couple of minutes about that topic?
Okay.
Hi, yes. I wanted to complement the topic of the effects of sanctions on technology. With the Bolivarian Revolution, we've been developing a series of technological advances that are important. For example, the space race. In Revolution, we were able to send 3 satellites to orbit, and that the aim of that was to construct our technological sovereignty, that Venezuela could be sovereign in its communications. And we had even gone to remote places where information couldn't reach, and our distribution of canaimitas, which are laptops for kids. All of these things were able to were able to be sent to these remote places. This was done under revolution. All of these advances had been or have been still in place, are in place. I can very responsibly say that the government of the US has sabotaged our satellite. It was important, it was key in the transmission of electoral data. Nonetheless, at this point in time, our resistance shows or has turned into, for example, the creation of the science university. We continue to produce parts of computers and the computers themselves. Our industry for making satellites has been affected. Nonetheless, we are opening the science university where you can study nanotechnology, artificial intelligence, and that's a way of resisting from the technological side. From the perspective of communications as well, sanctions generate misinformation, disinformation, and limits our capacity to show the reality of what we live through here and how we resist despite sanctions, these coercive unilateral measures. Here you can see a people that are standing up in each of their working places against the empire. We are part, for example, of the network of community radio, and we are integrated with the ZODI, which is the Zone of Integral Defense, so that through our radio we can bring to the public all of the things that are being done in terms of defense and that are being developed in that area here in Venezuela. That's what I wanted to add. Well, we're in the coast. We're in La Guaira state. Our neighbor is the Caribbean Sea, and we can say that we can't see the fleet from La Guaira yet. Nonetheless, along with the SODI, the armed forces, we're developing strategies for our defense. This last weekend, there was enrollment for militias. We saw how the people mobilized in order to complement the militia that already exists. This movement already existed. It's the people in arms. And for a long time, there hadn't been enrollment processes. But in the face of this true threat, we are certain that this is a true threat. We have seen in the face of it that the people have massively answered the call to enroll to the militias. Nonetheless, we can't see the fleet from our coast in the central Venezuela.
Would anyone like to respond
Thank you.
about the question about international response if the aggression happens?
I can, but Jorge, I think, has a response to the previous question as well. Jorge, if you want to go first.
Please, Jorge.
Oh, probably Jorge can't unmute himself. 1 second,
Oh,
because he rejoined. I have to make him.
okay. Let me, I've invited him to, okay, there we go.
Thank you, Alison and Jill. You won't see US invasion coming. You know, there's a NATO military base 100 kilometers away from Venezuela, from Falcon State, which is in Curacao Island. The Netherlands Antilles, these were some islands that were stolen from Venezuela in the 18th century. This is some island that you can see from the land. You can see Aruba from Falcon State in Venezuela. This is not like the people in Libya, the people in Syria, the people in Palestine, the people in Iran couldn't see the invasion before they were coming, like, you know, in the material way. So that's why we are asking for the Venezuelan Solidarity Network to understand all the information and more than we have to share, so we can, you know, close and strengthen our binds and share this information about Venezuela, because this is the only defense that we have right now in the international system. We are mobilized, we do our organizing, and we are a powerful military force in Latin America. Like Venezuela has the strongest air force in the Latin America and Caribbean region. We do have anti-missile shields, but that's not enough. You know that that's not enough. That's why it's so important for us to explain what's happening here, because it's not about distance, it's not about the reality. If I can explain a bit further, this is a very different situation and it's harder and most difficult than Grupo de Lima, for example. This is not only about political or diplomatic threats. This is about other kinds of actions. This can be military, okay? So right now we are surrounded by ultra right right-wing governments: Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana, Ecuador, Argentina, Peru. All these governments have offered, not only they are on the imperialist narrative for invading Venezuela about Tren de Aragua, about the drug trafficking and everything we have spoken in this conversation, but they have also offered military and logistical support for invading Venezuela. This is a very vulnerable moment for us. And with Venezuela, all the peoples, all the free peoples and all the free nations of the world are going to vanish. So it's important for us to organize and for keep doing this conversation and keep sharing information for defending not only Venezuela, but the possibility of overcome capitalism and neo-fascism in the world.
Thank you, Jorge, for those very wise words. And I feel that you have answered a question that we have from Damon about whether there's a Colombia, Panama, and Brazil have they hoping that they have officially refused to allow the USA to use their territory to launch military aggression on Venezuela. I know that Jorge pointed out how Venezuela is surrounded by right-wing governments, but are there the more moderate governments, have they pledged allegiance or to refuse to collaborate in this potential military action? Would anyone like to answer that question? I see Jorge nodding.
Yeah, we do have the support of Petro in Colombia and Lula in Brazil and some other governments in the world. But this is this is not like this is not something that defines the situation. Like, yeah, we do have 2 of our 4 frontiers covered right now because the government can change in both of those countries. But we have a NATO base. Like, you can see as I had just said, you can see the lights of the islands from Venezuela. We are not safe. We know we have to use all the possibilities we have in the international system for us to protect ourselves. But we need to explain. This is something that we must do. We need to explain to the people and to our allies like you what's happening in reality in Venezuela, so you can define this information, you can socialize it, and you can help us for understanding the reality that we're having right now. Because as you know, the truth is the first thing that dies in any war. And right now, Venezuela, it's surrounded by lies. Everything that you say in mass media and social networks about Venezuela, almost everything that you read about Venezuela, it's a lie. So that's why these kinds of conversations are so important for us. Thank you, Jill.
Thank you, Jorge. And I now give the floor to Jose Felix. And I don't know if Milagros also has something to add.
Sí, bueno,
Well, yes, the situation is very complicated for us right now. The closest allied governments right now for us are President Lula in Brazil and President Petro in Colombia. However, these governments also are in a complex situation. You have the case of Lula. He has Congress against him. He has congressional powers against. The same situation is for Petro, or even it's worse because Petro has many institutions. All the different powers are against him. And the military bases that were established during the Colombia Plan are still there. We're talking about North American military bases. So literally, we are surrounded from the military point of view. So we have 2 exercises to carry out. One along the lines of diplomacy in the United Nations, where we have been able to achieve favorable voting in relation to American meddling. A resolution in the UN has just been voted against the unilateral sanctions, any government against any people of the world. And that is very, very important to us. However, another line that we are trying to address, and you can help us a lot there, and this spaces like this helps a lot, just as Jorge said, I completely agree with him, is solidarity between peoples, what Chavez called the diplomacy of peoples, beyond institutional diplomacy or governmental diplomacy, people's diplomacy between social movements, organization, opinion groups, collectives, intellectuals, etc. And that we insist, and it's very important for you to help us in that sense, because one of the factors today that determines the war has to do with communication. It has to do with being able to say the truth. It's to be able to generate awareness facing disinformation among peoples. More and more communication efforts are made internationally to try to impose the truths, what they call truths upon the majority. So we really have to carry out an important effort to dismantle those matrices of opinion, like the Cartel de los Soles one. Our efforts have to go towards unmasking the truth. And so we really need international solidarity and as much support as possible that we can get. The people write in social media, that they gather signatures, that they demonstrate in front of embassies in any country in the world, that they carry out activities, cultural activities, political mobilizations, assemblies, demonstrations, posters, that they generate a lot of public opinion to stop war. Because as we said in the beginning, the war against Venezuela is the war for oil, for energy, over energy. And we are completely aware that our energy cannot go to fuel war. So it's a struggle to try to stop military aggression. And it's also a struggle for humanity. Barbarism, that's right. Thank you, Jose Felix. Thank you very much. And I see that Alison has her hand up. Alison, you have the
Y
floor.
creo que después de
I think
eso
that
voy a
maybe
dejar
after
que
this,
Edimar hable
I'm
otra
going to
vez
let
porque ha hablado
Edimar speak
poco
again
y luego vamos a
because she
continuar.
hasn't spoken a
Alison.
lot, and then we will
Yes,
continue.
agreed. Good idea. Thank you. I will say thank you to Giselle and Mercedes for interpretation tonight. We'll say it again, but you are also spending extra time with us, so thank you. A few things I really appreciate hearing the words of our Venezuelan co-fighters with these questions, and I think they've made a point loud and clear that we've heard, which is that it's the responsibility of people living in the United States and Canada to do whatever we can and whatever possible to stop US invasion threats and attacks on Venezuela, that the Venezuelan people are doing their part, they're prepared, they're organized, they are ready to defend their country, but we have to understand what our position is and what our part is. And I want to just say that I think we're at a time when it's important, whether or not we see that the ships are 10 miles from Venezuela's waters or, never make it that far because it's a political maneuver by Trump in order to wage psychological warfare against the people of Venezuela or assuage certain actors in the US government. I think that we have to understand that we must prepare to fight against this war and bring people to our side. The Lancet Medical Journal, which some folks have probably heard of more recently because of their coverage of the devastating impacts of the US-Israeli genocide on Gaza, also recently released a study regarding sanctions. And I think it's important that we don't brush aside the impact of US sanctions that we've heard about today as a war. Their study concludes that the death toll of US sanctions, unilateral coercive measures as they call them, is that of a war, that it's not unsimilar to a country that is under war. And I think that should really impact us. I know a lot of us here do anti-sanctions work, but Venezuela, since electing President Hugo Chavez, since beginning the Bolivarian revolutionary process, has not been at a time not at war with the United States. It's been at varying degrees, but it's been constant. And I think we have to hear very loud and clear our responsibility to end US attacks on Venezuela, in a country that is at war with the United States and under tremendous pressure from the United States and imperialism to really protect, maintain, build up that thread that connects anti-imperialist and anti-Zionist struggles today, which we know is critical to our fight and in defense of the better world we know is possible. And I think many of us have said that in different ways today, but Yuri, it's impossible, or not maybe impossible. We can't predict, of course, what the movement in the United States or Canada will do if there is an outright attack on Venezuela. but we can do what we can to protect that, to build that and to be prepared. And that's what we're talking about here today.
Thank you, Allison. And I just want to piggyback on what you said about the Lancet study. So yes, it's that's the silent genocide that's been going on for decades. And they concluded that the death toll annually is comparable to that of armed combat. 564,000 deaths estimated per year over the last 10 years. 51% of those deaths children under 5. So you can expect to be hearing more about this from Sanctions Kill and Americas Without Sanctions in the coming months. And since it looks like Edimar is not online with us at this moment, I will just read in English what she posted in the chat before she dropped off. Our armed forces create the strategies that are appropriate to defend ourselves and maintain peace in our Venezuela. Just like from the organized people, one of the most important strategies is to remain informed about the reality of what is happening. That we need to let the world know that we pose a threat to no one, that we are not drug traffickers, and on the contrary, we are a people of peace that firmly believes in unity amongst the peoples of the world. That is the legacy that we inherited from our Supreme Commander, Hugo Chavez Frias. And I think those are good words to end the formal part of our discussion this evening. And so we have a few announcements, and we can post again in the chat the link to join the Venezuela Solidarity Network. And also, please mark your calendars that our next Venezuela Solidarity Network webinar online picket will be Tuesday, September 30th at this same time, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. And we will also put links in the chat to tell Congress to block Trump's illegal drug war in Latin America. And we invite people to join the Echo Solidarity Project's letter campaign calling for no invasion of Venezuela and an end to blockade and sanctions. So we can post these in the chat as Allison is going to promote people to panelists. So, but actually, I think everyone is already panelists on our new format.
Yeah, this will be an invitation just to anyone to turn on their cameras if they'd like.
Okay, so as people turn on their cameras, I guess we can hear from Jose Felix and Milagros for another minute. Just a minute, please. Remember, we're taking our interpreters over time.
Well, just to conclude, my final words are that Venezuela is a threat to no one. We are a people of peace. Our armed forces are for freedom. Anytime that our armed forces left our borders, it has been to bring freedom to nations. We are not a threat. We are a people of peace. And tonight we want to say that. And nonetheless, we want to say what Chavez said. They should not be mistaken. We are also prepared. If we are attacked, we will respond. It is not our end goal. We are a people of peace.
Thank you. Gracias, Milagros. So are we ready? And before we take the picture, I want to again thank Giselle and Mercedes for interpreting for us tonight. And I want to thank all of our speakers, Jorge, Edimar, Milagros, Jose Felix, and Allison, for an excellent conversation. Thank you to everyone for being here. And you will certainly continue to hear from us about how we can defend Venezuela against these threats.
Thank you.